Hey guys, welcome to my world. I'm Jasmine, and if you're new here, please consider subscribing and liking this video, leaving a comment if you'd like. Of course, if you like this video, you can subscribe. You don't have to subscribe if you want to. I know whenever YouTubers tell their viewers to subscribe, they always make it sound like, hey, you must subscribe or else. No, I'm not going to do anything like that. This is a place for fun. And if you like fun, this is a place to be. And the last two videos, I've been talking about books that I like. And those were mostly just standalone books. There was Fever, A Wrinkle in Time. Those both are standalone books that are not part of a series. I don't think A Wrinkle in Time is part of a series. I've always known it as just a standalone. I know the author has written more books, but anyway. In those videos, I read the first chapter of my favorite books to talk about some foreshadowing that I might have seen, that I might have spotted, because I've read those books a few times, and even with just one book, even just reading one book, like just reading a book once, you can still find foreshadowing going back at it and seeing the first chapter. Anyway, you might see me once in a while sip some coffee through this video, because I remember last time I recorded 2 videos and I found that reading out loud is a little challenging for me. It's tiring, and I'm already tired. I finished finals, and you can see there's a Christmas tree around. This is the week of Christmas. I upload every Friday, and right now it's Monday, the time of this recording. It's Monday, a full 7 days before Christmas. Crazy. I'm excited. And I wish you could see the Christmas tree better, but as you can also notice, I'm standing in a different location. You can see my door. You can see a little beyond the door. And I'm standing, not sitting, and I wanted to try something new. Hopefully standing would make me more exciting, I guess. I don't know. I just didn't feel like sitting, okay? And my cat is here too. It's Buddy. Anyway, let's get on with it, shall we? So the first book I have here, I have the first book of a series. It's Scarlet and Ivy, The Lost Twin. Now, I'm going to read actually, I'm not going to read the back of this book because I've read it so many times. I know what it's about. So in this entire series, actually, I'm not even done reading the series. This is the first book. I've read this a while ago because I'm almost finished with the series. Anyway, in this book, something interesting you can see. I'm not sure if you can see it well with this camera, but you can see that one of the twins is mostly a shadow and the other twin is a full silhouette. What I like about that is, like, it's the lost twin. I like about all of the titles, all of the covers of these books have something interesting about them to kind of just really foreshadow and tell you what the story is about. Now, in this story, you have 2 girls. You have Scarlet and Ivy. And in this book, in the first book, one of the twins goes missing, and the other twin has to pretend to be that twin. And so I'm going to read the first chapter to see what foreshadowing I can find. I've actually, this book specifically, I haven't opened it. I haven't read this copy, because I had the first book. For the longest time, all I had was the first book. And I've read it and read it and read it and wanted to read the whole series, and then I got the whole series for Christmas, and then I'm still reading through them. A few years later, I can't get stuck on one thing. There's so many books, man. Alright, let's see how long chapter 1 is first, because I don't want to keep reading and reading. That's tiring. The first chapter is not very long, so let's get into it. So chapter 1, this is a story of how I became my sister. I got the letter on September the 1st. I remember that because it was the day after our 13th birthday. My 13th birthday, the first one I wouldn't share with my twin sister, Scarlet. I woke up and made my way down the winding stairs of my Aunt Phoebe's house, breathing in the smell of bacon cooking as I went. The early morning sun was already warming the air. It could have been a good day. As I emerged from the shadow of the stairs and into the sunlit hallway, I noticed it, an envelope lying on the stone floor. For a moment I thought it might be a belated birthday card. The only card I'd had that year was from my aunt, and looking at the single lonely name written at the top had hurt more than I could say. But as I picked the envelope up, it felt more like a letter. Scarlet had always liked to send me secret messages, but she sealed her letters so haphazardly that you could probably have opened hers just by breathing on them. This one was closed tightly and sealed with wax. I turned it over and saw that it was addressed to my aunt. I ought to open it, I thought. Aunt Phoebe didn't object to me reading her post. In fact, it was usually necessary. She just let it pile up in the hallway if I didn't. Cat, no. I went into the kitchen and sat down on one of the rickety chairs. I took a closer look at the seal of the envelope. It was black, with a raised imprint of a bird on top of an oak tree. The words Rickwood School were stamped underneath in dark-colored ink. Rickwood School, Scarlet School. Why were they writing to Aunt Phoebe? I slid a butter knife from the drawer along the envelope. Mrs. Phoebe Gregory, Blackbird Cottage, Bramley Hollow, 30th August, 1935. Dear Mrs. Gregory, as you are the guardian of Ivy Gray, I am writing to inform you that in light of recent unfortunate circumstances, a place has become available at our school, and your niece will take it. Her parents have fully paid the fees, and she is due to start as soon as possible. A teacher will be sent to collect her, and the details will be explained upon her arrival. Regards, Edgar Bartholomew, Headmaster. I threw the letter down as if it had singed my fingers. Could they really be referring to my sister's death as unfortunate circumstances? I sat and stared at it, questions racing through my head. For some reason, Rookwood School wanted me, the twin who wasn't good enough. Surely there are hundreds of other girls they could give the place to. Why me? It was then that I noticed that the smell of bacon cooking had turned into the smell of bacon burning. I jumped up and ran to the iron stove, waving the smoke away from my face. It was too late. The bacon was already cremated. Aunt Phoebe must have wandered off somewhere in the middle of cooking. This was a common occurrence. I glanced out of the kitchen window and spotted her sitting on the bench in the garden. Her hands folded neatly in her lap and a faraway expression on her face. Aunt Phoebe's husband had died in the Great War, leaving behind only a study full of books and a small pension for my aunt. She hadn't been quite the same since. I grabbed the letter and went outside. My aunt didn't look around, even though my footsteps crunched on the gravel betrayed my presence. She was watching the goldfish in the pond. Little ripples curled as they bobbed to the surface and then darted away, their golden scales glinting in the sun. Aunt Phoebe? Oh, Ivy, she replied, blinking up at me, and then returning her gaze to the water. I didn't see you there, dear. You got a letter from... I started, but my aunt interrupted, seemingly unaware that I had spoken. Scarlet loved the fish, didn't she? I remember when you were little. She used to kneel by the pond and make faces at her reflection. She always said that it was like another twin, only even wetter than you. I gave a weak smile. Typical Scarlet. She made fun of everyone, and me the most, but I never thought anything of it, or try not to anyway. Scarlet and I were mirror twins. Before we were born, our mother thought she was having only one baby, but then I arrived, a slightly smaller and weaker version of my sister, but a perfect mirror image. Our birthmarks were the same, but on opposite sides. I was left-handed, while Scarlet was right-handed. Aunt Phoebe's husband, Dr. Gregory, had once told me that our hearts might be reversed, too. I was like Scarlet's reflection, come to life. I sat beside Aunt Phoebe on the bench. It wasn't surprising that my aunt's thoughts were of Scarlet. She'd always been everyone's favorite, bold and brash and outgoing. I was just Ivy, shy, clinging Ivy. I could have been Scarlet's reflection, but I might as well have been her shadow. Oh, goodness, I'm sorry, Aunt Phoebe said. I was just reminded of her. I understand, I said, but I didn't. I didn't understand why Scarlet had died. I didn't understand how someone so full to the brim with life could be gone. I didn't understand why God, if he was up there, would give me a twin only to take her away again. Or that somehow the world was still carrying on. You got a letter, I repeated, waving it at her. Aunt Phoebe looked up. Oh, what does it say? They want me to go to Rookwood, to take Scarlet's place. Her eyes widened considerably. Well, gosh, she paused. That's quite an honor. It's a prestigious school, isn't it? Rickwood School, barely a few months ago, just before the summer had begun. Scarlet had died there. A sudden fever, they said, flu or pneumonia, something that couldn't have been predicted or prevented. My stepmother casually told me these explanations as I sobbed, as if they meant nothing, when half of my world had just been torn away. I never wanted to go to that place. Not now, not ever. I looked up at my aunt, her gentle face framed by graying hazel curls. And your father has already agreed to it. I sighed. It was just like him to agree such a thing without telling me. According to the letter, it says the fees have been paid in full. Well, then it's decided, my dear, said Aunt Phoebe. I didn't reply. I'll leave you to think about it, she said brightly, patting me on the leg. Then she wandered off down the garden path, past the privy and the vegetable patch, and began pulling weeds. She started to sing quietly to herself, already a world away. I felt helpless, like I was being slowly dragged towards Rookwood, a place only seen in my imagination. But nonetheless, it filled me with terror. Maybe it will be a good thing, I tried to tell myself. A new start, new friends. Any friends, after all. Scarlet had always said she wished that I could join her there. I would be closer to her there somehow, wouldn't I? Without warning, I started to cry, and hastily wiped the tears from my cheeks. Who was I kidding? The last place on earth I wanted to go was the place where Scarlet had. Just thinking about it made my head pound. I threw the stupid letter onto the grass. Aunt Phoebe looked up, clutching a handful of straggly dandelions. I put my head in my hands and heard her walking back towards me down the gravel path. Oh, Scarlet, she said, looking over me with blank eyes. I'm sure you'll be all right going to this school. I'll miss you terribly, of course, but you will be fine on your own, won't you? She didn't even notice her mistake. I didn't think I would ever be fine on my own. So there's quite a bit to unpack in this first chapter. The thing that I'd like to uncover the most isn't necessarily foreshadowing, but character development. So in this first chapter, you can notice that Scarlet and Ivy are clearly not very well cared for. And if you were to read the second book, you would figure that out. You'd figure out that their father had remarried, and I'm just going to trash on his wife. So Scarlet and Ivy, their mother died, and their father remarried, and they were almost instantly sent to another school. Now, Ivy didn't get to go, but she did end up going to her aunt's house instead of staying home, and Scarlet went away. So you could tell instantly that their stepmother didn't like them one bit. She was excited to send them away, and the fact that Ivy didn't get to go didn't stop her from still sending Ivy away and sending Ivy to Aunt Phoebe's house. And Aunt Phoebe, you can already tell that throughout the book, she's not very useful. She forgets that she's cooking something. She wanders away. She mistakes Ivy for Scarlet, which isn't that big of a mistake because they're twins. They look alike, except she knows Scarlet is supposed to be dead. And so it's crazy. It's like Aunt Phoebe is, well, she's nice and lovable. She's a lovable character. You can already tell with how foggy-minded she is. She's not going to be very helpful in this book. And you can also tell in the first chapter that the school isn't necessarily something that you would want to go. You can see that something suspicious is happening because they had to do a test. It suggests in the first chapter that they had to do a test to get into the school. Ivy didn't make it. Ivy was a twin that wasn't good enough. Scarlet made it. And even though Ivy didn't pass the test, she was still sent in after Scarlet to take her place. And why would someone's identical twin be sent in after them after they're suspiciously dead? Like, why? Why wouldn't it be someone else that actually could pass the test? Why is it Ivy? Why is it the identical twin? And you can tell throughout the story why it's Ivy and not someone else. It's because it actually says this on the back of the book. This is a story of how I became my sister. I think I remember reading in the first chapter, yeah, this is a story how I became my sister. It's the very first sentence. You can tell it was like, okay, so here's why they sent Ivy and not someone else. Why they sent the identical twin and not someone else. Because Ivy is supposed to be Scarlet, which means something happened to Scarlet and it was not a sickness. The school has a reputation to keep. They want everyone to think that Scarlet was sick. But she didn't die. They don't want people to think she died. Even though they say she died, there's something suspicious going on. There's some plot holes that you can notice as the story progresses, with not necessarily from the author, but just plot holes of this suspicious happening where it wasn't completely thought through. For instance, if Scarlet was dead, why would they send in Ivy, the identical twin? Even if they did it because, well, maybe she was good enough after all. Even if they had said that, they could have just called her Ivy and she could have been herself instead of Scarlet. She could have lived as herself instead of Scarlet. But you can already tell with the first sentence and then reading about Scarlet's death that there's something odd going on and someone's covering something up. And that's what makes the first chapter so interesting. That's why I think a lot of chapters, a lot of books, the first chapter, you know you want to read the book if you are captivated in the first chapter. And in this book, I was captivated with the first sentence. I was captivated with the back of the book, which says, a creepy boarding school, a sudden disappearance, a secret diary waiting to be found. This is the story of how I became my sister. Even there, it's foreshadow. Even in the back of the book, when it tells you what the book is about, there's foreshadow with there being a diary. Like, yes, something suspicious is happening, and Scarlet is trying to talk to Ivy. And I just think that the series itself is fascinating. And once you get more into the series, you can find that there's differences between the twins that you can tell, where each chapter is actually narrated by a different twin, and you can tell which twin it is. Not just because the chapter is labeled as the twin's name. So I think that's interesting. That's why I love reading the first chapter to you guys and just picking apart the foreshadow that I find in the first chapter. That being said, thank you for watching this video. The book I was talking about was Scarlet and Ivy, The Lost Twin. It's by Sophie Cleverly. It's a book series of about 6 books. And I can go, there's a few more things I like to add about the series. I like to say that it's a lot like Harry Potter. You know how in Harry Potter there's a new Defense Against the Dark Arts teacher in every book? Well, in this series, there seems to be a new headmaster of the school in every book, because something is corrupt with the headmaster. Just like in Harry Potter, something is corrupt with the teacher. And it's in a boarding school as well. So there's some Harry Potter elements. It's like Harry Potter meets Nancy Drew. That kind of thing. Without the magic. Anyway, thank you for watching this video. I hope you guys had a fantastic Christmas. Bye!